Alright, game loving people, it's me, Waifu Selector, and today I'm going to be talking about A Plague Tale Requiem. And you might be thinking, didn't that game come out like 5 days ago or some shit? I already watched like 10 reviews from GameSpot and IGN and a bunch of other assholes. What took you so long, Waifu Selector? Well, I'm a fucking normal person, so I don't get review copies. I buy the game myself. Like a fucking normal person. I don't suck IGN dick, so they don't buy my games for me. But I also don't do shitty journalism and play political corporate games. I just talk about things like a normal fucking person. So this is probably better than whatever corporate review you watched, because I'm an actual person with an actual opinion that no one's paid for, okay? Anyway, A Plague Tale Requiem. It's a game I played the entirety of, developed by Asobo Studio, and is the second game in the series. I'm gonna tell you what I think about it, and corporate didn't give me my opinion. Alright, let's do this. So in the lead up to A Plague Tale Requiem, while I thought it was cool and deserved that the series was getting another installment, I wasn't insanely excited to play it. This, however, would turn out to be a mistake, mostly due to the unique quantities of cinematic narrative contribution and gameplay contribution, as well as the elevation in quality of both. Let's look at the gameplay first. If you played the first game, A Plague Tale Innocence, then you know that these are stealth-based games, and while encounters were perfectly fine and enjoyable in the first game, especially in a gaming landscape almost devoid of dedicated stealth titles, the encounters were still pretty bare bones and straightforward in terms of what you could do. And it made A Plague Tale Innocence extremely easy to anyone with even a little bit of patience. But for Requiem, they seem to have opened up the options a bit. In Innocence, fighting back was sort of a last resort for when you had failed to sneak by. But here in Requiem, you're given the option to kind of just say, I'm gonna kill all these motherfuckers. Now, of course, it works in tandem with the stealth. You don't really have the option to just turn this into a full-on action game, and that's for the best. But with the added tools like the crossbow, which we saw in the trailers, you can be very aggressive, but not so aggressive that you don't have to weigh out your tactics and take account of your enemies beforehand. And there's a perk system where you gain new abilities in a certain skill line by using that playstyle. So if you're playing more stealthily, you'll get a perk that makes you walk faster while crouched. If you're being more aggressive, you'll be able to take advantage of your environment in different ways by pushing enemies into fire or rats if they're near it. And I think it's really cool, and it could maybe incentivize you into playing a certain type of way. Now, outside of the way you approach and deal with enemies, there's also choice in how you avoid them. In this game, I noticed a lot of the encounters have multiple routes you can take depending on which one you think will help you best avoid detection. And there were times where I only saw one, and then upon reaching a certain point, I realized, oh, I could have went that way and used that environmental thing to distract that guy and blah blah blah. But there's almost always more than one way to get out of any given encounter, and I think that's a good touch. The gameplay isn't so different that it's unrecognizable from the first game or anything, but it is an improvement, mostly in variety and design. Now, what about the narrative side of things? Well, the narrative side of things has also been improved, but it has been improved significantly more than the gameplay side, if you ask me. In my opinion, the first game story was pretty overrated. It was fine, but really failed to be exceedingly enthralling or thought-provoking in any way. I just think people looked at the setting and the tone and were in before the plot points even took place, which resulted in the story being a little overrated. But I think this game's story, A Plague Tale Requiem, is deserving of all the praise its predecessor's story got and more. This story is fantastic, mostly by just being a captivating, engaging, heart-rending adventure, but there is also a bit of commentary on like trauma and acceptance and what acceptance means as opposed to just giving up. And it's not insanely heavy-handed time to learn a lesson type stuff either, So yes, there is a bit of commentary in here that adds to the experience, but it is mostly drama entertainment for the sake of it. But boy, does it fucking entertain. And by the end of it, I felt satisfied. I'm obviously avoiding saying exact story points and stuff like that because the game's still new and you should go play it for yourself. It's amazing. But yeah, I think without spoiling anything, I've gotten my point across about the story. So yes, I think everything got stepped up from the first game. I think the gameplay got stepped up, but the story really got stepped up, you know, complete with charismatic characters and all of that. And we've seen and played games that just are all narrative and just get carried by the narrative. I'm talking about like the whole Uncharted series and like the first 2 games in the Tomb Raider reboot trilogy. Those are games to me where every time you have to actually play for too long, it's almost like, all right, dude, just get on with the story, you know, because the gameplay is so secondary. It's so unengaging and unenjoyable that you don't even want to do it because the game's just banking on high-level cinematic set pieces and whatnot anyway. Even The Last of Us, the first one, I feel like is like that. Except The Last of Us got carried to an astonishing degree by its story. It didn't matter what the gameplay was. I personally didn't find the gameplay very enjoyable at all, but the narrative is so goddamn good that it makes it bearable to like eat the vegetables that are the gameplay to get a sweet piece of narrative candy at the end of every gameplay section, you know? Anyway, I say all that to say A Plague Tale Requiem is more uniquely doled out in its gameplay and narrative ratio. Yes, the narrative holds more weight in this game, but the gameplay isn't just some painfully boring afterthought, because the combination of good cinematics and lackluster gameplay results typically in a middling okay to good game, except in the case of The Last of Us where the cinematic side was so good that the rest didn't matter. But I think A Plague Tale Requiem is more along the lines of The Last of Us Part 2 and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the 3rd game in the Tomb Raider trilogy, where you actually have worthwhile gameplay alongside a worthwhile narrative. Not saying that one side isn't better than the other in any of those games, but that they're both worthwhile. And I actually think the gameplay is the better part of both Shadow of the Tomb Raider and The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 didn't reach the narrative heights of The Last of Us Part 1, but it still came out a really good game thanks to now exceptional gameplay that the first game just didn't have. And while A Plague Tale's gameplay obviously isn't as technically sound as The Last of Us 2, the overall core enjoyment loop of the gameplay is not as far under as you might think. And in the case of a narrative comparison, I'm picking A Plague Tale Requiem story over The Last of Us Part 2's every time, easily. And it's not because I think Part 2's story is bad. I just think Requiem's story is that good. Just a bit of comparison and stuff there to, you know, other games of maybe a similar ilk and like a similar story to gameplay ratio and stuff like that. Just trying to give people an idea of what I think is going on with this game, you know? If you're wondering why I went on a tangent talking about all these games that have nothing to do with this. Oh, and before I go, I do want to bring up that I did run into some bugs, it's 2022, guys. Welcome to games, they don't all come out just perfectly. It's too big, there's too much happening, you're probably gonna run into some bugs. But yeah, I ran into a bug. The most probably egregious one where I had to restart the area was I fell through the ground. I was just walking, fell through the ground, and I was just stuck there. Had to restart the checkpoint. Yeah, a couple of times some of my companions just got like stuck on a bush or some shit, and I had to go back and get them. Like they just couldn't follow me for whatever reason because there was just like a bush just in the way. I don't know, but some bugs and stuff. It is what it is. But just thought I'd put that out there. But yeah, I think that's mostly all I wanted to say about this game. If I had to put a number on it, I'm thinking an 8, because 8 is great, and that's exactly what this game was. If you didn't play the first one, A Plague Tale Innocence, I think Requiem is worth going back and playing through the first one so you can really get that sense of story and improvement. But okay, that's all for now. Hope you liked the video. I just like talking about video games. That's why this is not a review, this is a talk. But feel free to tell me what you think about this game if you played it. Tell me how stupid and wrong I am about it, or if you're gonna get this game because of what I said. Either way, until next time, I am Waifu Belector. I am just a normal guy. I like hentai, and I'm gonna go finish Gotham Knights so I can talk about that. Goodbye.